You may not know this, but China's 1.3 billion people are desperate for water, and this Chinese water crisis could have a surprising impact on the U.S., whether they try and take our water or not. See, they've got 20% of the world's population, but only 7% of the world's water. That means each Chinese citizen gets just 22 gallons a day. Here in America, the average person uses about 150 gallons per day. Now, the Chinese aren't huge fans of America anyway, but imagine what they're thinking. Here you've a country with a fraction of the people using a whole lot more water. It's not hard to see how the Chinese could get jealous, and America could be facing a pretty big threat. But let's back up for a second. By 2030, China is expected to be 190 billion cubic meters short on water. That's about as much water as is in Lake Mead, where the Hoover Hydroelectric Dam is. And you don't have to be a rocket scientist to know you can't pipe that much water in. But this isn't just a problem China's going to have in the future. Right now, there are 11 provinces knee-deep in what the World Bank calls water poverty. One of those provinces is Beijing. And not only that, but according to Business Insider, 190 million Chinese regularly drink polluted water. That's an obvious bad idea. It leads to, quote, far above average mortality rates. Translation, their water is killing them. But you might be wondering what this has to do with you, or the United States. Well, I'd like to call your attention to the fact that China is one of the U.S.'s largest foreign debtors, and we're having some problems paying them back. One theory is they could call our debt in their currency, yuan, or in gold. But what if they decided to call us out in water? Sounds far-fetched. But any way you slice it, the Chinese are going to need our water. Actually, that's wrong. They already desperately need water, and we've got a lot of it. Or at least we used to. The problem is, the U.S. is entering a water crisis of its own. That's why I want to share with you the #1 free water secret you need to know in the coming collapse. Just a warning, you might not survive the water crisis without this. But the good news is, if you know how to turn on your tap water, you're overqualified to use this simple secret. So let's get down to business. The world is running out of clean drinking water, and as humans, we can't survive without it. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. The Earth's surface is 71% water, but we can drink less than 0.036% of it. And most of the water we can drink is in a giant lake in Siberia. And the way the population is growing, polluting and destroying nature's water filters, we're going to be out of water soon. Some scientists say around the year 2030. The good news is we've got some time. 2030 is a pretty long way off. Don't get me wrong. I'm not thrilled about the idea of having to figure out some way to live without water, but there's not a whole lot we can do today. But here's where things get tricky. If you live in the U.S. and use well water or city water, you may not have that long. That's why I made this video, to show you the simple free water secret. It'll literally let you stockpile as much water as you want without having to buy a single bottle. And the timing for this video couldn't have been better. Here's why. Lately, the U.S. government has been trying to do what it does best: cover up what's really going on in the water crisis. It's not surprising. Just like the economy, it's too big to fix, so they just go into debt and pretend like everything is great. But the feds have slipped up on a couple of vital details. #1, we're wide open to terrorist attacks on the water supply. And #2, we're using a water system that's 80 years out of date. We're talking pipes that are 100 years old in places like Washington, D.C. No wonder we had 250,000 water line breaks in 2010 alone. But there's an even bigger problem. You might not realize it, but your tap water could be poisoning you. And that's whether you use a well or city water. But don't take my word for it. Here's a clip from an article published in August 2011. Quoting, "We," they're talking about the U.S. here, "have the safest drinking water in the world, except for the pesticides that sometimes sneak in, and the rocket fuel, and the antibiotics." End of quote. Long story short, they're saying our water isn't safe at all. Now, this might sound like some fringe conspiracy theorist, but it's not. This article was on the front page of Reader's Digest, a magazine who is about as far away from shaky theories as you can get. So if they're picking up on it, you know the situation is obvious. They go on to talk about the many scientists who found disturbing chemicals in our tap water. Stuff like bisphenol A. If you haven't heard of this puppy, you should check out Alex Jones from InfoWars. He's found some pretty disturbing stuff about how this has turned male mice and rats into females. Literally. And there's a pretty strong hunch the same thing is happening to us men in the U.S. Another chemical to learn about is fluoride. This isn't my area of expertise, but there's a lot of very smart people making some strong statements. You might be surprised to hear that many experts are maintaining that the government is using fluoride in the water to dumb us down and make Americans easier to handle. This sounds about right when you look at the current generation of teenagers. But whether you believe any of those or not, here's the one that got me. You know all those extra pills people don't use? Pills for everything from birth control to artificial hormones to painkillers? They're flushed down the toilet or thrown in the trash and end up in a public landfill. No big deal until you realize those same chemicals that are illegal to buy without a doctor's prescription are showing up in our water, and after you drink it, in your body. Not that big of a problem since there's only a little bit of it in the groundwater, right? Well, that's what I thought until Dr. Frederick von Saul from the University of Missouri explained that some of these drugs can hurt you, even if there's a teeny tiny amount in there. They get into your body, look like a hormone, act like a hormone, and can screw things up pretty bad. Bottom line is, it's been proven over and over pharmaceuticals are in our water. But before we get to the water secret we're here to talk about, let me introduce myself. My name is Damian Campbell. You might have seen some of my presentations being passed around Newsmax, Town Hall, or WorldNet Daily. I'm the author of Survive Anything and the 37 critical food items sold out after crisis. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 30,000 people have read my guides, and over 1 million people have seen my food stockpiling presentation in the last few months alone. But please don't think I'm trying to show off by telling you this. Honestly, this part gets a little uncomfortable for me. It feels like bragging. Please understand, I just wanted to let you know that I'm not some yahoo or conspiracy buff up here spouting the latest doomsday nonsense at you. But here's the most important thing you need to know about me. I'm a red-blooded American, and I'm proud to say it. This water crisis is potentially the biggest threat America has ever seen, but I don't plan to go down without a fight. Anyway, that's enough about me. We don't have much time, so let's dive right in. You need to know this one weird water secret to survive the U.S. water crisis. This can be the difference between having plenty of crystal clear drinking water for you and your family, or thinking of dirty mud puddles and oases. Now, before we get there, one thing you need to realize is even Uncle Sam is starting to pick up on this crisis. California, Texas, and Florida all have publicly stated they're in a water crisis. You can see them yourself if you check Google. And the EPA says at least 36 states are expecting water shortages, even in non-drought conditions. But here's why you should care. The more obvious it becomes that the U.S. is in the middle of a water crisis, the more the feds are going to try to lock down the cheapest and most effective ways to purify and store water. After all, what better way to push the liberal collectivism agenda than by controlling a resource we can't live without? So, please, take a couple of minutes to watch this entire presentation. Turn off your cell phone, close any other tabs or windows. I think you might be surprised what you learn. Hopefully, by the end, you'll completely understand the secret to having pure drinking water, even in a crisis. Honestly, right now our tap water, even with all the crap in it, is better than nothing. The problem is, we're wide open to a terrorist attack on our water supply. Think about it. We guard power plants, but we don't guard water. Which do you need more to survive? Exactly, water. But back in 2003, the FBI issued a big statement saying we weren't at risk. Supposedly, our water is completely safe from a terrorist attack. The logic they used was it'd be impossible for a terrorist to dump enough bacteria in a reservoir to poison us. And you know what? They're actually right. The problem is, just because they're right about the reservoir doesn't mean that's the only way a terrorist could hit us. There's a much simpler method, and they've got to already know about it. It's almost too easy. Anyone can open a fire hydrant, shove some chemicals in, and poison an entire neighborhood. Or they could just strike the place where all the water comes together, the water treatment facility. But the scariest one to me is a dirty bomb. Whether you're on a well or city water, if they hit us with a dirty bomb, it'll make our groundwater radioactive. And everybody knows that kind of water is the kiss of death for your internal organs. In all honesty, it's not something the U.S. government is ready to handle. In fact, they're not ready to handle much of anything when a crisis hits. By the way, you can verify this yourself. Go down to your local government office and ask to see their emergency plans. Just be careful. You might not like what you see. The reality is, the government can't stop high school kids from skinny dipping in a water tower. What would happen if a person really wanted to do some damage? And that's all assuming the government is around to handle it. Economists predict that we're going to get hit with another economic downturn any day, and the threat doesn't show any sign of letting up. Real unemployment, not the way Uncle Sam skews the numbers, is higher than it's been since the Great Depression, and U.S. debt is skyrocketing from a bailout that didn't work and a president that didn't care. But as important as our economy is, what do you think is going to happen to the basics like food and water when the government's house of cards gets knocked over? Bingo. The whole infrastructure is going to collapse on itself, and water is going to be a precious commodity. So the way things stand now, you've got two options. One, you can do nothing and hope the government gets this all worked out. Or two, you can take matters into your own hands and find a free or cheap way to get clean, pure drinking water for you and your family, no matter what happens. If you're going to count on the government, you got my prayers. Hopefully it won't be too late when you come to your senses. But if you're going to take matters into your own hands, I want to help you. So get out something to write with. Here's the #1 free water secret to help you claim your water freedom from the government. It can be summed up in one word: diversify. And no, not your stock market portfolio. I'm going to say it again. Diversify. Don't rely on just one of any of the free or cheap ways out there to purify your water. Have a variety of methods. That means you need to do two things. One, find some basic water books or educational material. And two, pick out a couple of the easiest ways to purify your water without spending a lot of money or showing up on Uncle Sam's radar. If you do these two things, you can make sure you'll never run out of water, even if the crisis goes longer than any one of the experts predict. Now, the word diversify might seem a little fuzzy or confusing at first, so let me explain. Here are the exact steps you need to take. It's a simple 3-step process. First, you need to do some research on what the primary water threats are. You can break them down into 4 main categories. 1, terrorist attack. 2, government failure. That includes power outage if you're on a well. 3, accelerated global drought. And 4, short-term water crisis. From there, you can break it down further, but this is enough to work with right here. Second, you need to educate yourself on how to combat any one of those threats. Now, this might seem like a lot of work, but there are some pretty decent books out there. If you got enough time, you can even get them for free from your local library. And here's what you need to do third. Pick out a few of the easiest ways to purify any water you can get your hands on, and put them in the back of your mind until the time comes when you need them. You don't have to go nuts and start stockpiling water or spend a ton of money on expensive systems. You just need to tuck away your favorite methods to purify water. And if you're not sure what methods are out there, let me read you a list of my top 3 favorites. First up is the U.S. Marine Corps style water still. Marines are experts when it comes to surviving tough situations. Second is free home-built water filters, a pretty straightforward way to get clean water. Not flashy, but it works with stuff you've got laying around the house. And third is one you'll hopefully never have to use. It's I2 and purifies radioactive water. No matter which methods you choose, you've got to be able to grab water from anywhere or anything, even your toilet, and turn it into crystal clear drinking water. Either that or give up now, because without water, you won't survive the crisis. The bright side is that it means that while the rest of the world is running around trading what's left of their life savings for bottled water, you'll be at home turning radioactive pond water into clean drinking water while you sleep. To show you a little bit of what I'm talking about, here's my favorite stupid simple method. And all you need is a clear plastic water bottle, a piece of cloth, and a funnel. First, put the funnel in the plastic bottle. Then put the cloth down so it covers the entire funnel. This is going to filter out any of the big particles. Then put the bottle out in the sun. Now, let it sit. And that's it. If you've got direct sunlight, it should be pure after 6 to 7 hours. If it's cloudy outside, give it about 2 days. The trick is, the ultraviolet rays pierce the clouds, so even on a dreary day, the sun is purifying your water. That means no matter what happens, you can get your water clean with this simple method. That's it. Now you've got one simple method to add to your arsenal. All you've got to do now is grab a few more. The problem is, no one has any reasonable ideas on how to keep clean drinking water flowing to your home, especially not if the dollar crashes or another financial crisis hits. That's why I've been grabbing every water guide I could get my hands on for the past 6 months. But it seems like none of them recognize how big this crisis could be. If the economy tanks or we get hit by massive natural disasters, we're going to lose food and water for more than just a couple of days. So I took all of those techniques, guides, and methods and distilled them down. What are left are the parts vital to surviving a water crisis. And if you're interested, you can take a look at those water strategies and see if they can help your family. It's called Survive Water Crisis and could make the difference in a lot of Americans' lives, especially when they have no water. It's for the patriots like you and me who see the obvious truth, but maybe can't afford to stockpile water. Let me give you a sneak peek of what's inside. The main Survive Water Crisis Guide took quite a bit of effort to put together, but after all, freedom isn't free. It takes hard work to figure out what the most dangerous part of the U.S. water crisis is going to be and how to stop it. But each of these items have been broken down so you can see exactly how to defend against any water threat. That means you'll never have to worry about you or your family going thirsty. Inside the guide, you'll learn how to turn the infected water you get now into pure, clean drinking water. The neat part is this uses the exact same water. You'll also see why the current economic climate plus the water crisis compound to make a situation worse than the U.S. has seen in 80 years, and what you can do about it to make sure you and your family are never without water, along with the simple steps that you need to step up and take command of your family's water supply, even if they're skeptical about it. Plus, how to be confident and fearless in the face of a water crisis without having to fill hundreds of bottles of water. There's also a ton of stuff on what exactly is in your tap water, along with a disturbing look at how the bottled water companies have been sneaking past health screens to give you the crappiest, most toxic water they can without being sued. And you'll also get to check out this independent report of what's going on in the world's water supply. It's stuff to get news you can trust. And you might be surprised what you learn. You'll have a chance to get a big look at how and where terrorists are most likely to attack U.S. water, and more importantly, what to do about it. That way your family doesn't have to worry about drinking the poison the terrorists try to pump in. Plus, the many weird water secrets to help you purify water at home without expensive equipment. So there it is, Survive Water Crisis. With this, you'll be head and shoulders above the average American. But the problem is, you can't fit all the vital water crisis information inside one guide. That's where your first bonus comes in. It's the 72-hour water crisis survival blueprint. You could probably see why this is important. Most water crises happen quick and catch you off guard. In some places like rural California, residents are regularly forced to go without water for 3 to 5 days. And honestly, I didn't believe that statistic until I saw an eye-opening documentary called Tapped. It was stunning to think that people in our once great nation can't even get water. Another time a water crisis is going to pop up is when our old pipes break, just like in Boston, 2010. A massive water main broke, forcing the governor to declare a state of emergency. The water was unsafe to drink for the next 3 days. So the question is, do you want to go 3 days without water? Probably not. Technically, the human body can survive for longer than 3 days with no fluids. But here's what most people miss. Do you think things are going to be peaceful and perfect in the middle of a water emergency? Heck no. And if you're dehydrated and forced to fight your way through a crowd for water for your family, that could be like a death sentence, especially if you're over age 50. That's where this guide comes in. Even if you haven't had a chance to prepare when a disaster hits, this will get you through the first 72 hours. So what this really does is buys you time. You get a chance to think and breathe, without your body going nuts because it doesn't have fluids it needs to keep functioning. But let me warn you, if you think you'll just ration your water, or spread it out, you're going to have big problems. The Mayo Clinic says the human body loses about 2 liters of water a day. That means just to keep your input and output the same, you've got to drink another 2 liters. Cut that number by even 25% and your body won't function quite right. Organs start running slower, your mind can't process as quickly, your strength takes a hit, and your speed goes down. Do you want to be slower, stupider, and sicker during a crisis? If not, you need to get your hands on plenty of water in the first 72 hours. This guide will show you exactly how to do that without spending an arm and a leg, and without making any crazy preparations right now. You'll also be able to keep your blood pressure and vitals healthy. Depriving your body of water is a quick way to cause major problems for yourself if you don't have this 72-hour window planned out. In fact, if you have to go without water, you will definitely be dehydrated. And that's not a comfortable place to be. The most common signs of dehydration are a severe headache, nausea, dizziness, and/or fainting. That means you could be in the middle of an already bad situation when all of a sudden you feel like you're going to be sick. You know you don't want to lose the precious fluids in your body, so you try to ignore it. Then you get hit by a pounding headache and feel so dizzy you're about to fall over. Sounds like a horror story, but any doctor will tell you these are the basic symptoms of dehydration. And FYI, as you get older, your thirst goes down. So many seniors are going into a crisis dehydrated. They just don't know it. That means the older you are, the more you need to stay hydrated. So be sure to read the 72-hour water crisis survival blueprint carefully. But there's one thing nobody is talking about right now. What do you do if the water crisis lasts more than 72 hours? Obviously, there are a lot of situations that could go longer than a few days. For example, if there was a serious terrorist attack or even union strike, we could be stuck a month or more without safe drinking water. So to help, here's your second free bonus, the 30-day plus Water Crisis Survival Guide. The reality is, you don't want to live like it's an emergency forever. That's why you should take advantage of the systems you'll learn about in this guide. You'll see stuff like the multinational Japanese invention that no one is talking about, but can make your home's water perfect to drink. Or why water filters aren't the answer for long-term survival, especially not if we get hit by a dirty bomb. And one of the coolest things you'll learn is how to use this special black mica extract to make your water not only clean, but more healthy than the water you drink now. All in all, this should be more than enough to put you in a powerful place. Think about it. Water will be worth more than gold in one of these disasters, and you'll be able to produce as much as you want. But even with all of this, there's one thing missing. Most common water disasters are covered in Survive Water Crisis, but there's a lot of stuff going on right now the American people should know about. So, you're also going to get a copy of the guide, Deadly Water Secrets Revealed, as your third free bonus. Honestly, this one almost didn't make the cut. The information is just too convicting. Heck, when I first saw it, it all made sense, but I just didn't want to believe it. But the way I see it, you deserve the chance to look at the facts and decide for yourself. Just to warn you, some people might not be able to handle this stuff. There's a lot of information and misinformation out there about these topics, but we as Americans have a right to know what we could be facing. So inside you'll learn what could really be happening with fluoride. I've gone through and tried to separate fact from fiction, and what came out is surprising to say the least. You'll also get an inside look at chemtrails and what that could mean to your drinking water. You already know heavy metals are showing up at disturbing levels in our groundwater. Now, get the evidence to see if chemtrails are behind it. But the big elephant in the room is Japan's nuclear reactor, Fukushima. It's so big everyone wants to ignore it, but it's public knowledge things are worse in Japan than the Japanese government is willing to admit. So what does that mean for the U.S.? We don't have time to get into it here, but inside the guide you'll get a chance to see some of the disturbing facts behind Fukushima and how to protect your water and family from radiation. Now, this entire water survival course didn't happen overnight. Frankly, it contains some of the most important information you could read this year. But just like every other course I've written, I've got a selfish reason for doing this. I want to live, and I want my family to live. Think about it. If we're the only ones with water, word is going to get out. And then a mob of people who used to be my friends and neighbors, are going to come pounding on my door. I won't go down without a fight, but there's no way I can take an entire mob. But if there's a network of patriots out there who can purify any type of water, we'll be able to quench the thirst of our entire nation. But that's not the only reason. There's something even more personal behind this. The second part is, I want to send a message to the feds and anyone else who tries to control America by keeping our water, oil, or food hostage. Screw you. You can't have my guns, my freedom, or my water. If that means I stand alone, so be it. But with the right tools and information, I know my fellow patriots will stand tall. That said, realize not everyone is going to understand what we're doing here. Heck, some people in my own family think I'm crazy for paying attention and preparing for the water crisis. But let me play devil's advocate for a second. Imagine they're right. Imagine there's no chance of a terrorist attacking our water. Imagine everything is just like Uncle Sam wants us to believe. And then we get hit by another terrorist attack. After all, no one denies the fact they are out there, and they want to kill us. So the question is, do you honestly think our water supply is 100% secure? Because if there's even a chance of an attack, it seems to me it's worth looking into whatever information you can get your hands on. But if you don't think so, fine by me. You're a grown man and have to make your own decisions. See, when this crisis hits, whether it's because of another economic crash, social protest, a terrorist attack, or the system breaking because of old age, the outcome is going to be the same. Spoiled Americans are going to panic, run to the store, and buy every ounce of water they can get their hands on. Think about it. Have you ever seen what happens to gas generators after a hurricane comes through? A mob of desperate buyers floods Home Depot or Lowe's and buys every generator they can get their hands on for outrageous prices. Which do you need more to survive again? Electricity or water? Right again, water. So what do you think people are going to do when they realize the water crisis has started? There isn't going to be a bottle of water left for miles around. And just like the generators start to sell for double or triple what they normally cost, water is going to be jacked up sky high. But unfortunately, some people are going to ignore this warning. After all, it's a free country and you can't force someone to take a stand, even if it's the right thing to do. Here's a blunt message for all those liberals looking down their nose at us because we're actually prepared for a water crisis. If you're not with us, you're against us. People don't realize that by not preparing, they're putting the rest of us at risk. When a man and his family are dying of thirst, they'll do just about anything to get water, even if it means attacking their fellow Americans. Yep, it's not a popular idea, but honestly, what would you do if your family had no water and you could tell time was running out? That's what I thought. But enough of the talking. Hopefully by now you realize the reality of the water crisis we're in, and if you don't, there's nothing I can do for you anyway. So, if you're interested in getting more information on exactly how you should prepare to have practically unlimited water, no matter how bad the crisis is, you're going to like what you see next. The problem is, there are no publishers interested in marketing these guides. Most of them wouldn't touch them with a 10-foot pole. They're just too truthful, and the government does not want this type of information getting out to the public. Think about it. If Uncle Sam loses control of your water, he's lost a big bargaining chip. So that means I'm having to do things a little different. If you've ever published a book or guide, you know it's an expensive process, especially when you look at how many guides and bonuses you've got here. In fact, the value for this guide and each one of these bonuses can be broken down line by line like this. Survive Water Crisis is worth $47. The 72-hour Water Crisis Survival Blueprint is $29. The 30-day plus Water Crisis Survival is valued at $37, and Deadly Water Secrets Revealed has bottomed out at $19. The catch is, if this one is too controversial, it might have to go. That's a grand total of $132. Not bad when you think about how much money and time it can save you by showing you how to stockpile the water you're getting right now. But let's be honest for a second. With the way the economy is right now, some people don't have an extra couple $100 lying around. Not to be personal, but I've got no idea if you can afford something like that, and as your fellow American, I don't think you should have to. But here's the problem. There's too much information here to have on one website, and there's no way I can afford to publish these guides for free. Plus, do you really think the government will let something this drastic and embarrassing for them stay public for long? This is too important to be silenced. Heck, I've spent thousands of dollars of my own money getting the word out about this project, and that's before I've published a single guide. And no one can keep spending money forever, so the $100 price seems pretty reasonable. But I'm going to go out on a limb here. To try and make this available to you and all the other Americans serious about stockpiling water for the collapse or any other disaster, I've done everything I can to cut costs. And I'll admit, it took a lot of work to reduce my expenses so drastically. But the exciting thing is, I think this will put Survive Water Crisis in your budget with room to spare, even if you're in debt or struggling financially right now. But anyways, enough of the suspense. If you're really interested in Survive Water Crisis, check out the bare minimum price on the button below. Now you see why I'm so excited. Honestly, I don't see a way I can go much lower than this and still afford to pay the bills. But here's the catch. If you're rich and don't need a method to store and purify water at almost no cost, please leave this resource for people who really need it. And let me warn you, if there's not enough interest in how to get pure water even in a water crisis, I'm going to pull Survive Water Crisis and the 3 free bonuses off the market. It's not worth the hassle for me if the American people aren't going to take this water crisis seriously. So, if you're ready to find out how to survive a water crisis without having to spend a lot of money or do a lot of prep work, click the button below. By the way, your order will be processed using the ultra-secure 256-bit SSL server. That's the same kind Amazon, eBay, and banks use. But I realize some people are nervous about purchasing online. After all, there are quite a few scammers out there. Or maybe after buying Survive Water Crisis, you remember an important bill you've got to pay and need your money back. But here's the thing. If this is something you'd actually use to get ready for the coming water crisis, I want to help. Here's a way that might work. What if you could get the guide and bonuses free for 60 days before you decided if you want to keep them or not? Is that something you'd be interested in? Well, here's what you can do. Get the guides to check them out. Then read them. Use the simple water strategies. Even prepare your family for the water crisis. And if for any reason you need your money back in those 60 days, just send me the product back and I'll refund the whole guide price. Sure, that means some people are going to take advantage of me, but honestly, I trust my fellow Americans. Just to spell it out, here's my guarantee in writing. And where it says, no questions asked, it really means no questions asked. You don't have to give a reason for why you don't want the product, and there's no loopholes and no restocking fee. Once you send the product back, you get a refund for the entire purchase price. FYI, I'm an official NRA Business Alliance member and Better Business Bureau member. They've checked me out and cleared me. I've got nothing to hide. Now, before you make your decision on whether or not this simple water crisis survival course is for you, there's one thing you probably want to know. Some people might think you're weird or overprotected for buying Survive Water Crisis. Heck, some people in my family think I'm batwing crazy. But don't let them pull you down. Whether they realize it or not, what you're doing today could save their lives. When they're thirsty and searching everywhere for bottled water, you'll have plenty. And you won't even have to say, "I told you so." On another note, don't worry about the package Survive Water Crisis comes in drawing too much attention. You'll get a discreet-looking package in the mail, no flashy stickers or other junk. And my shipping records are kept private. So now that we got that out of the way, it's time to make a decision. If you're confident beyond the shadow of a doubt there's no water crisis and you don't need to know how to survive any type of water disaster, leave this page now. But if you're even a little bit unsure, let me ask you, are you willing to chance your family going without water because you wouldn't take a risk-free look at a couple of guides? It's your decision. Hope to see you on the inside. Click the button below to continue. Still here? Let me be straight up with you for a second. Some people can't handle the truth. They try to pretend nothing is ever going to happen and our water is going to be safe forever. And hopefully they're right. But the question is, are you going to gamble with the lives of the people who depend on you? If you decide not to learn the secrets I've got inside Survive Water Crisis, I'm fine with that. But you've got to decide right now. Are you going to protect your family with Survive Water Crisis? Yes or no? Click the button below to get your copy of Survive Water Crisis ASAP.